The Senate is conducting an inquiry into bank closures in regional Australia, and this is a huge step in the right direction. I'm Robert Barwick with the Australian Citizens Party. Our party campaigned hard for this inquiry because we saw the devastating impact that branch closures were having. Small businesses and their customers lose access to cash. Vulnerable customers lose the certainty and security of face-to-face banking, forced to bank online where they are the primary target of sophisticated scammers. Towns lose money as their residents, who have to travel to larger centres to do their banking, also do their shopping there. More than 300 branches have closed in the last 2 years. Many towns have lost their last bank. In February, Westpac closed its branch in Kiwibank. This means the locals there must travel 540 kilometres to get to their nearest bank. The banks claim they're only responding to people banking online, but it's a lie. The inquiry has already heard evidence that banks are forcing customers online by harassing them to register and removing the branch services. The Big Four banks are making obscenely high profits, in part because of free money they get from the taxpayer-owned Reserve Bank's term funding facility. The banks are on the public dole and they repay the people with a knife in the back. It's not right and it's got to stop. But branch closures are only one of the many outrages the banks are committing. The truth is, the Big Four represent a kind of oligarchy. The Citizens Party says it's time to break the stranglehold they have over our people, our elected officials and our government. That's why we have campaigned for years to restore the economic ideas and policies of Ben Chifley and John Curtin. Under these great leaders, Australia had a national bank, a people's bank, that forced the private banks to lift their game and compete with a public alternative. The original Commonwealth Bank was created by the government in 1911 as a public bank and operated out of post offices. Unfortunately, it was privatised in 1996. Today, the Citizens Party has drafted legislation to create a new People's Bank, a publicly owned post office bank. Instead of being merely an agent for the private banks, which is what today's Bank at Post program is, our legislation would create a new public bank. This new bank would provide full banking services wherever there is a post office. Many countries have such post office banks, and Japan Post is one of the most famous and largest. In 2001, our neighbours in New Zealand created Kiwibank, a publicly owned post office-based bank. The situation is urgent. Branch closures are continuing, despite the Senate committee asking that they stop for the duration of the inquiry. National Australia Bank outright refused, while Westpac and ANZ only agreed to pause some branch closures. Only Commonwealth Bank respected the committee's requests. For this inquiry to work properly, the Senate committee needs to hear from you and everyone you know who is impacted by branch closures. We encourage you to make submissions to the Senate inquiry and urge the committee to demand an immediate halt to all further branch closures and to recommend a public post office bank as the real solution. Please share this information with elderly people impacted by branch closures who may not watch internet videos. The inquiry needs to hear from them. You can find a link to do this in the description below. And you can amplify your voice by signing our petition calling for a public post office bank. Please sign our petition now and tell all your friends and family about it.
Spoken and authorised by Robert Barwick, Citizens Party, Melbourne.